My name is Norman Bates, and much of my life has been spent in solitude, trapped within the walls of the huge house that looms like a watchful specter over the Bates Motel. From the outside, the motel seems insignificant, barely a refuge for travelers lost on the road. But the house. The house is different. Its walls, cracked by the passage of time, seem to whisper stories that only I can hear. The wind that hits its windows is not just a natural echo, it is as if the house breathes, as if it feeds on the dark secrets it holds in its entrails. Here, time has no meaning. Days and nights melt into a perpetual fog of monotony, where shadows lengthen in the corners, playing with my mind, reminding me that I am not alone. I never am. Not since my mother decided to stay with me forever. My mother was, since my father's death, the only figure in my life. She raised me alone, and her control over me was absolute. We didn't need anyone else. Her love was protective, yes, but also oppressive. We lived isolated from the rest of the world, in a bubble she had built, where good and evil were clearly defined according to her rules. The outside world was a corrupt place, full of temptations that, according to her, I had to avoid at all costs. And the greatest danger, according to my mother, came from women. They were treacherous, deceitful creatures, bringing only chaos and destruction. She taught me to fear them, to distrust their smiles, their furtive glances, any gesture they might offer me. I, as a child, believed every word she said to me. My life was defined by that fear, by that isolation, by that deep desire not to disappoint her. The house became my refuge and, at the same time, my prison. I had no friends, I knew no one else outside those walls. Everything I did, everything I thought, was conditioned by the constant presence of my mother. Her voice, firm and authoritative, dictated every aspect of my existence. I could not make a mistake, I could not deviate from what she considered right. Every decision I made, every thought that crossed my mind, had to be approved by her, even in her physical absence. Because, although she was no longer in body, my mother was never completely gone. She was still here, in the house, in my mind. Always watching me, always guiding my steps. Remember the day everything started to change. A man appeared in our lives, someone who tried to come between us. My mother's fury was indescribable. I, who had never felt anything so intense, began to experience a mixture of emotions that I didn't fully understand: jealousy, fear, a deep rage that grew every day. The man was trying to take my mother away from me, and that was something I could not allow. My world revolved around her, and the thought of losing her filled me with terror. What happened next has become a kind of haze in my mind, as if my memories had become distorted. But I know that, somehow, my mother was no longer physically present. At least, not in the same way. The motel became my only distraction. I devoted myself to maintaining it, to tending to the empty rooms, to waiting for the few travelers who stopped in that forgotten corner of the world. But even then, the daily routine was not enough to silence my mother's voice. She was still here, watching me, guiding me, making sure I didn't make mistakes. Sometimes I seemed to see her in the dark corners of the house, as if her spirit still dwelt within these walls. I dared not contradict her. I knew that, though she was no longer in the flesh, her power over me was still as strong as ever. And then came Marion. Her appearance destabilized everything I had managed to keep in balance. She was unlike anyone I had ever met before. She was young, beautiful, and something about her presence aroused emotions in me that I could not control. I felt an attraction to her that went against everything my mother had taught me. Every time I saw her, I experienced a mixture of fascination and guilt. I knew my mother would not approve, and that only added to my confusion. I could feel my mother's fury burning in my mind every time I thought of Marion. And that fury consumed me inside, like a fire I couldn't put out. The night everything changed, Marion was in her room, oblivious to what was coming. From a distance, I watched her, unable to take my eyes off her. What happened that night is an enigma in my mind. The memories are blurred fragments, the sound of the water, the muffled scream, the sepulchral silence that followed it all. I don't know what exactly happened, but I know that after that night, nothing was ever the same again. My mother always told me I should protect myself, not to let women like Marion come between us. And in a way, I think I did what I was supposed to do. At least, that's what I tell myself so I don't lose my sanity. After that night, the fear of discovery plagued me at every turn. The cops started coming around, asking questions about Marion, looking for answers I couldn't give without giving myself away. I tried to be nice, I tried to look innocent, but I knew the truth was written on my face, in my eyes. Every look they gave me made me feel like everything would fall apart at any moment. My mother's voice kept telling me not to worry, that she was by my side, that everything would be okay. But the guilt was something even she couldn't silence. Finally, the truth came out. I couldn't hide it anymore. What I had been trying to suppress for so long was exposed. The truth about my mother, about me, about everything that had happened. They took me away from the motel, away from the house, but they wouldn't separate me from her. They would never separate me. Because even though she is no longer physically present, my mother is still alive inside me. Her voice still echoes in my head, guiding my every step. Sometimes I wonder if I will ever be able to escape her, if I will ever be free. But I know the answer is no. I am her child, and I always will be. Her influence over me has never faded. And even though the world sees me as a monster, as someone broken, I know that what I did for her. Because without my mother, I am nothing.